Welcome back. We start with breaking news. Another deadly shooting in Cape Town. This time in Gugulethu, where 3 people have been gunned down last night. Police were called to the scene and found 3 bodies in a bedroom. 2 others have been wounded and taken to a medical facility. Officers say preliminary information indicates that 4 suspects opened fire on the victims before fleeing the scene. They made off with cell phones and a gun belonging to one of the victims. And police are also appealing to the public for more information in order to at least make some arrests at some point. Right, of course, we'll give you more information or bring you more information on the story. It's still developing. Let's move on to this in the meantime. Former preschool teacher Amber Lee Hughes will know her fate today. She is accused of the rape and murder of 4-year-old Nada-Jane Challita, her ex-boyfriend's daughter. Judgment is expected to be handed down this morning. While this case has shocked the country, female sexual abuse of children is more prevalent than we think. Reports suggest that 1 in 4 children is abused by a woman. For more on this, we are joined by child protection activist Robyn Wolfson Vorster. Thank you so much, Robyn. Welcome to the South African Morning. Thank you for speaking to us about this topic.
Thank you for having me, Masego, and good morning to your viewers.
Thank you. So, you wrote an article in the Daily Maverick about this, and you know, a lot of people while reading it would be shocked to learn that 1 in 4 children are actually abused and even sexually by a female. You know, the fact that we don't discuss this, how does that even affect the children? The fact that we don't confront this problem.
Yes, I think that's a very important question. In fact, the statistics might be even higher because we know this is a crime which is vastly underreported. And one study which particularly focused on boys who'd been sexually abused by women suggested that it might be as high as over 40% of the boys who were being abused by women. But I do think it is something that we don't talk about. We have this idea that women do not sexually abuse children. And so that it's always hard for children to come forward anyway to talk about sexual abuse. But it's even harder when their perpetrator is a female.
Yes. So, you know, some people, and I just want you to answer those people who are thinking, if it's a boy and the abuser was female, how is it biologically possible? You know, there are people who ask those questions.
Of course.
Even though, of course, the definition of rape was changed legally in the criminal justice system and even in the Criminal Act. It does say that it's not only penetration anymore.
That's right.
So I just want you to speak to those whose perception still remains, no, but how is that biologically possible?
So I think, you know, this is a concern, and it's one of the reasons why particularly teenage boys often don't come forward. And here's the problem, is that in many cases, particularly with child sexual abuse, we see a very careful process of grooming of children. So it's not a violent rape. It is something where the child is coerced and their boundaries are brought down, and they are brought to the place where they end up having sexual intercourse without necessarily consenting to it in the way that we would understand consent. So just because they were biologically present and they would, I mean, we understand bodies, we get aroused when there is sexual contact. But that doesn't mean that the child was consenting. And that's incredibly confusing for children. And often they feel personally like they might have been complicit, which makes them even more reluctant to come forward and let people know that they've been hurt.
You know, I want to talk about the perpetrators as well. And I mean, I know that sometimes psychologists will be brought in to see if the person being accused of such a crime probably isn't well, especially when it's perpetrated against their own child.
Right.
But if it's something, you know, like rape or murder of your own child, which is called filicide, right, in the psychology world, do they hide probably behind the fact that I'm trusted to be the nurturer, so nobody will look at me as a perpetrator, because the face of a perpetrator on a child, especially with rape, is a man?
Exactly, exactly. So yes, so to your point, the 2 biggest things which make us believe that women don't sexually abused children are the fact that they are portrayed as being nurturing, maternal, loving, caring. Now, we've seen in a couple of very high-profile cases recently where women have been trafficking and even murdering their own children. So I think we're coming to terms with the fact that just being a female caregiver doesn't necessarily make you a nurturer. But that and the biological aspect of it do certainly make people believe that this is not possible. And women themselves are often in denial about the fact that they have done anything wrong. So we see with a lot of female perpetrators, they don't necessarily in any way take responsibility for their actions.
You say in your article that you call for better statistics, right? Maybe to break down who the perpetrators, especially in those where we find that there were convictions, correct?
Absolutely.
How will that help us with awareness, for example? What should policymakers do?
So I think every time I have this conversation, there are a whole lot of people who come to this moment where they realize, oh my goodness, my first point of sexual contact was actually rape. It wasn't something that I consented to. So there are more and more young adults and children who are coming forward and saying, sure, we're recognizing that in fact there was abuse. I think the awareness raising is really important, and statistics are so critical because until such time as we can actually lift the lid on this idea that women don't abuse, there will always be people who are deeply affected by it, and we see that whether the perpetrator is male or female, the impact is the same. Children either turn it internally, and we see massive cases of self-harm, you know, eating disorders, even suicide, or alternatively they turn it externally, and we see huge violence against other children and as they grow up into adulthood. So what we need is to be able to track this and identify that in fact it's a problem, and then we need to filter that through to the criminal justice system, so that in fact there are more convictions for women who rape children.
Exactly, because it becomes a vicious cycle, because that person will then, you know, perpetrate it on someone else. It's been proven scientifically that that is what happens in such cases. Robyn, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for speaking to us. Robyn Wolfson Vorster is a child protection activist speaking to us about a topic that we so often keep hidden as society, that there are female perpetrators of violence against children and even rape against children. And it doesn't have to be penetration, and it is biologically possible. The more we don't talk about it, the more these children are afraid to report it, because they are laughed at, even at police stations, for example. Thanks, Robyn, for your time. And thank you for watching. Don't go anywhere, though. We're back at 8 o'clock with your headlines and more of your news. See you on the other side.